Everybody loves prospects, future superstars, unlimited potential, the next generation of baseball. Unfortunately, they don't all pan out. For every Julio Rodriguez or Bobby Witt Jr., there's a Gavin Lux or a Joe Adell. I'm going to look at some prospects who were very hyped going into last year, didn't pan out, and have now just been forgotten by fantasy baseball managers. Let's start with the Mets. They had a lot of exciting rookies going in last year, and partly because they were just struggling, searching for an answer, and they didn't find it. One player who looked like he could hold down the hot corner and come through last year was Brett Beatty, and it just didn't happen for him. It was a disappointing season, to say the least. He wound up slashing 212, 275, and 323 over 389 plate appearances. Despite a raw power grade of 70, he only wound up with 9 home runs and 34 RBIs. There was a little bit of concern among scouts that maybe he wouldn't ever fully grow into his power or just wouldn't be able to do it at the major league level. So we'll see if that happens. He's still got time, obviously. He was a really interesting draft pick for fantasy last year. I wouldn't say a high-end pick, but I'll tell you, I remember in one NL-only league last year, taking him in the mid to late rounds. Got so many compliments, people saying that could be a league-winning pick. I was pretty happy with myself until the season started. But just like everything else about last year, the Mets want to forget and move on. They will. Beatty will have a chance once again to get that third base job. And they've already said they're not going to go out in the free agent market. I think they did enough of that last year. But they're going to find a solution internally. It's either going to be Beatty or Mark Vientos. Ronnie Mauricio not in the mix anymore now that he suffered a season-ending injury before spring training is even here. The same thing is going to apply here to Jordan Westburg in Baltimore. Orioles, are a team loaded with high-end talent, and it all came up from the farm system at one time. There's still more to come, and that complicates things because I've talked about Jackson Holliday, the number one prospect right now in most scouts' eyes in all of baseball. And you might say, well, the kid's so young, he's not going to get a shot. Oh, yes, he will, because they've already said he's got a chance to make the opening day roster. They're not just going to, send him out there in spring training and, get him some experience and pretend that he's got a shot. He actually could make the roster. So when you add him in the mix to all those young players they already have, especially in the infield, and in addition to the veterans that are still hanging on there and going to get at bats, guys like Ramon Urias and Jorge Mateo, it seems like there's a logjam here. So is Westburg even guaranteed to get playing time? It's too early to say that for sure. Right now, Roster Resource has him projected as the starting second baseman, and I think he'll keep that job. Of course, we'll see, some sort of a mixture here. The veterans will get some playing time here and there. And some of these guys, like Henderson, like Westburg, they're going to mix and match. He won't just play second. He'll play third on occasion, maybe short. Who knows what this infield's going to wind up looking like on a daily basis. But Westburg does have a role here. And he wasn't terrible as a rookie. He wound up hitting 260, 3 home runs and 4 stolen bases over 228 plate appearances. I think the most disappointing thing is he just didn't put up many counting stats. He got on base, but didn't really flex much power. The fact that he's going to be probably at the bottom of the order might also hurt his run scoring and RBI opportunities. But that doesn't mean that he should be completely ignored in fantasy because you want a piece of this Baltimore offense more than likely, and I do think he accumulates enough at-bats to be productive. Not as big a name, but believe it or not, the first one that came to mind when I decided to do post-hype sleepers, guys that got a lot of buzz before the 2023 season, especially in fantasy baseball circles and even some analysts, saying, I really like this guy, nobody's on him. Well, the first name I actually thought of was Miguel Vargas for the Dodgers. The most significant thing that broke for him was his pinky, and this was the issue. Before the season started, he had a fracture in his pinky, and because of that, he could barely even swing, and ironically, that wound up being a good thing for him in some way because he drew notice for drawing walks. The first week of last season, he drew a walk in 9 of his first 18 plate appearances. Obviously, a 50% walk rate being highly unsustainable, it fell off. But it wasn't because he has such a good eye and he's such a patient hitter. He is, but it's because he literally couldn't swing without pain. And so it forced him to train his eye to be more patient. It worked to some extent, and then it didn't work because By the end of the season, he wound up hitting 195. And that's in a total of 304 plate appearances. We're not talking about a small sample size. So last year was kind of a wash for him. And are you thinking, all these additions the Dodgers have made, where does he even fit in? Is he even going to be on the opening day roster? And he might not. But I will tell you, he has a shot. He's got some versatility. Remember, started as a second baseman, and he can also play first base, is where he wound up moving, to some degree last year. But they have also said, Dodgers GM Brandon Gomes said that he's going to be playing some outfield too. So he's got that positional flexibility, not only in real life, which will help him maybe squeeze in there on certain days, but also in fantasy, makes him more eligible. It's going to be a battle to get some ABs, but hey, the Dodgers are going to use whoever has the hot hand. If this guy does get hot and he has a good eye, he does have the ability to hit for average. He's got some power. There are injuries. There are platoons. There are guys who become utility super players. Whatever the role is for Vargas, I say that he could contribute at some point. And hey, he's in a lineup that if he's playing, you could definitely benefit from. Now, it's pretty hard to find a pitcher to fit the bill here as a post-hype sleeper because every pitching prospect is so hyped up, and usually either they deliver or they bust, and there's no two ways about it. But let's go with the guy who lost rookie status and should have a shot to be in the rotation again next year. I'm still high on Taj Bradley for Tampa Bay. If you look at the season totals, you'll probably just stay away. A 5.59 ERA, and just got worse as the season went on. But this goes back to the fact that when he first stepped into the rotation, he was actually really solid. In the first 10 starts of his major league career, he held down a 3.86 ERA and a 1.20 whip, which is not too bad, especially considering that he's pitching in the AL East. And then the problem started. In one game against the Diamondbacks, gave up 4 home runs, and that just set a trend because for the next 11 games he started, he gave up a total of 17 home runs. The culprit here was the fastball. Just did not get enough movement on his four-seamer, kept it all down the heart of the plate. Now on the other side, you're looking at his breaking and off-speed stuff, and he does use his secondary pitches a fair amount. That actually got a little bit better in terms of giving up fewer hard hits toward the end of the season at least. Bradley's profile right now reminds me a lot of Josiah Gray, who's with the Nats. Guy who's got good stuff. He's got a 4-pitch mix and does get strikeouts. Bradley wound up with a 28% strikeout even when all said and done last year. I am still in on him as a prospect because he's got good stuff. He just needs to locate a little bit better. And so I'm going to see if he can figure it out. And another hitter who, again, for me, I just kept hearing over and over again how everybody loved as a sleeper, thought that Oscar Colas for the Chicago White Sox could wind up being sort of a poor man's Yoenis Cespedes. Talk about a power-hitting lefty, a Cuban, who could leave the yard and maybe be a surprise source of power. Ultimately, he just wound up being poor. A minus 15 run value for batting. It's pretty terrible, and his StatCast charts were ice cold blue across the board. And it's not like he wound up at least giving you some home runs in exchange for the terrible average. Just 5 home runs in 245 at-bats. Besides that, it might be hard to buy into him this year because the White Sox were already bad enough last year. It looks like they're getting worse. They've given up some talent. They have not got any in return. They were sellers at the trade deadline last year. Is this just going to be a terrible team and he's going to be stuck at the bottom of a terrible lineup? I still do believe in guys like Andrew Vaughn. Luis Robert had his breakout season. Eloy Jimenez, if he can ever stay healthy for a sustained period of time. There is enough at the top of the order to make me think that if Colas can figure it out, he can drive in runs, and the power is still there. Colas isn't necessarily a guy I'm fully buying into, but I'm going to keep an eye on him. I think he's still in a position to produce. If this whole team can figure things out, if he can figure out how to chase just a little bit less, I think there's some untapped potential here. And maybe it's better late than never to recommend a guy who maybe just needed a fresh start. I can't say I'm predicting a breakout season for Nick Senzel, but I can't say I'm not. Look, I feel like I've fallen for this over and over again. This guy was the number 2 overall pick several years ago, former top 10 prospect in all of baseball. That was back in 2017. He just hasn't put it together. And look, he can't even stay on the field for a full season, has yet to go over 375 at-bats in a year. But he's got a blank slate now, going to Washington, and it sounds like he'll be the everyday third baseman. Maybe that'll help keep him healthy. Maybe just a change of scenery is all he needed. Maybe just took till age 27 before he was fully ready. Let's see if it happens. I know, he's a career 239 hitter. The power hasn't fully developed. And again, just so inconsistent. So many different issues. Maybe he'll finally be healthy going into this season. Maybe a change of scenery is all he needed. Maybe this is one of those players who, at now age 28, is going to just figure things out. I will say that in a deeper league like an NFBC 50, any sort of a best ball league, definitely worth a shot. In a redraft league, maybe not drafting Senzel, but hey, I've talked about how third base is very thin. You could do worse than take a flyer on a guy who has the talent, just hasn't seemed to put it together yet. Those are some of the top post-hype sleepers that you can keep an eye on during draft season. If you missed my favorite sleepers at hitter or pitcher, check those videos out right here.